Hey everyone, I'm here with John Dvorak, and he was an author for PC Magazine since the 80s and was recently let go under circumstances which include him writing an opinion piece on 5G, which is not necessarily in line with sort of the industry perspective on it. It was a bit critical on 5G. So we're here today to talk about that and his experiences, and knowledge and what he's been researching about 5G and other topics. John is, since 1976, he's been involved in computers, and he's been a writer and a columnist on technology since the 80s. And he runs with co-host Adam Curry, he has a podcast called The No Agenda Show, which has a reach of over 250,000 listeners. So, John, welcome to this podcast.
Yeah, good to be here.
So we'd love to just dive right in. And a lot of people are looking at this, and they're seeing this article that you posted, or this opinion piece on PC Magazine, which is now no longer there at the original link. It was replaced with another piece, and you were let go. And so what happened?
I noticed, like, after that happened, that one of my columns was replaced by another column on the same topic by a different writer. And it was very clearly shown. I did a whole document on it that ran on Medium, which apparently you can't get. Anyway, I showed that it was like this kind of weird that I'd written this column on 5G. It wasn't really that stat column there. It's not really that critical. It's mostly talking about the critics or who are worried about it.
Yeah,
that's really what it was about. I don't have any personal criticism at the moment, or
right.
I'm starting to develop them now.
Yeah.
And so they replaced this with 5G is the greatest. And I thought that was a little suspicious.
Yeah. So here's the original column. It's still on PC Mag, but
they put it back up after people complained.
Okay. So they put it back up. They put it on a different link. So it originally went down, but they replaced the original link with this piece by Sasha Sagan.
Yeah, Sasha Sagan's What is 5G? 5G is real.
Yeah.
Is on there, and it's all this 5G promotion.
Yeah. Okay. So at what point during this process were you let go, or your contract terminated?
It was a couple of weeks before they changed the column, swapped the column out.
Okay.
So it wasn't like column swapped, I'm fired. No, it was like I think one or two more columns after that. And then they swapped this column out in the background. I also found it peculiar. I did write to them. I had one of the editors, my wife is in contact, bitching.
Yeah. Okay.
And he says, "Oh, you never contacted us." I contacted him. I asked everybody at the magazine, because I have this distribution list, why was my column removed and replaced with this? I got nothing back. In fact, they haven't said anything to me since this incident. So I'm suspicious, obviously, because it's my nature. And now I'm starting to look into this a little more. You turned me on to the professor at University of California at Berkeley, and we're gonna put up a 5G page called debate5g.com.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds neutral. I think it will be.
Yeah.
We're going to see what comes of this, because it sounds to me as though there's something going on here with 5G that's not in the best interests of the public, or otherwise all these things wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So there is, as our audience knows, when you start looking into the science and the facts of 5G and how they're kind of ramming it through, it does, the natural inclination, without going into anything conspiracy, is to wonder why are they pushing it through, and why are they ignoring so many cities and individuals who are not wanting it. And there's even there's hundreds of cities have city councils and mayors have said, we're going to sue you if you, the FCC said to the FCC that they're going to sue the FCC if they continue to push the agenda through and take away the rights of cities to choose what infrastructure gets deployed in their areas and how. So this is developing to be a huge story.
It's almost like a science fiction movie.
Yeah.
Why are these guys, they silence anyone who has anything bad to say, And yeah, there's always these crackpots out there that are going to say bad things about any new technology because there's a Luddite vein that runs through all of society. But in this situation where you find too many of these things happening, and they're happening on a strange basis, and there's this rush to get 5G out there, you have to wonder why. What is going on? This is not normal. This is not the normal kind of pushback. This is abnormal. And now it makes you wonder. You have to look into it.
Did you hear about, I think it was last year sometime, there was an Australian journalist named Marianne Damasi who got fired for doing a critical piece on Wi-Fi in schools and looking at the science and the health effects and the reports of negative effects on there. Did you hear anything about that yet?
Yeah, I have. The Wi-Fi thing is another. Here's what is going to happen. I think these guys better be aware of this. The radio guys that make these systems. If this 5G thing goes through and it turns, or if it starts becoming a big issue and people become more aware, I'm reminded of the era of the MP3. The MP3 was an inconsequential technology during the period of time in I believe it was the early 90s, that college kids were using to exchange music, steal music and exchange it for free in the file sharing method. Before a couple of MP3 players came along, and one of them before the iPod came out, and the record industry, RIAA, sued them and made a big stink about it and drew a lot of attention to MP3s. And people started looking at it and saying, hey, this is cool. Look at all this free music I can get. The next thing you know, piracy went nuts. And everybody went crazy about the MP3 because it got the public's attention. This is the same thing. We're going to see the public get too much. They're going to start questioning Wi-Fi as a result of the 5G thing.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a huge problem for these mechanisms. I don't know how it's going to end up, but there's a lot of information out there. I was turned on by this professor that you told me about at University of California at Berkeley. Yeah. He's a public health specialist, and he's got web pages filled with links of, this is bad. Here's why. It's, it's just unbelievable. So I'm now, thank you. I kind of have to probably maybe thank PC Magazine and the 5G people for making me aware, because I was actually kind of naive, and I'm picking up the slack here.
Yeah.
Good work.
Good. Well, I'm just going to share a couple more links here just with our audience. So this is you mentioned Joel Moskowitz there at Berkeley. He's kind of one of the scientific researchers, and you can see the director of the Center for Family and Community Health, School of Public Health in Berkeley. So he's got Safer EMR is his website here, and if you just go on the right hand side, you can see a lot of significant research here about 5G, and there's about 4 or 5 links which are helpful for anyone to get up to speed. He's asking, is 5G harmful to our health? And then looking at specific peer-reviewed studies on these higher frequencies. So what is 5G? 5G is essentially, it's the 5th generation of wireless infrastructure, which is being deployed by the FCC, or actually by communications companies through using the FCC. So they now control the FCC according to Harvard ethics. And they're deploying these basically between every 2 and 10 homes, right in front of the home. So throughout all neighborhoods, this is in the process of being deployed in a very quiet way, without public discourse, and with using very strong PR and propaganda campaigns that 5G is a good thing. You're going to be able to download movies in seconds. Meanwhile, it's using higher frequency bandwidths from I think it's 24 to 70 gigahertz and above. So it's not 5 gigahertz. That's kind of a misnomer, or in my opinion, it's like a purposeful obfuscation. They see 5, John, you know what I'm talking about? When you log—
Yeah, I know. You see 5G, you think 5 gigahertz.
You think 5 gigahertz, and even on your Wi-Fi router, if you log in and there's either 2.4 or 5G usually, that isn't actually 5G. So that's being kind of—
No, it's a different technology with similar nomenclature.
Right. Right. So that might be, I think it's my opinion, John, is that's being done purposefully to kind of
Yeah, I
normalize,
never thought of that.
right? Normalizing people's acceptance of 5G. Oh, it's already in my router. It already says 5G in my router, but it's something totally different. It's 24 and higher gigahertz. And so this research that Joel Moskowitz and many other scientific researchers are bringing forward is very it's looking very, very bad for the public health.
Yeah, I think he might be onto something here. But it's howling in the wind if he doesn't get more support from the tech community. The tech community and tech writers, the business, is turned into almost, it's something you've been fighting for probably since the late 70s. It's turned into a bunch of cheerleaders. And so whatever goes, and it's not as though they're getting paid to be cheerleaders that I know of, but they're cheerleaders, and it's not helping anybody.
Yeah. Just to go back to this, what you and I were talking about before we started recording here was that you wrote an article on medium.com, and you were kind of outlining your experience with, this whole journey of being let go by
The episode.
And just asking questions and just putting the facts out there and asking questions. You sent me the link. Here it is. If I click that, now this comes up for you still, but for me, if I click that, this is what I get. I get medium.com suspended, and this page is unavailable. And so you and me are trying to figure out why that is.
Yeah. If you go to my regular page, which would be medium.com @Dvorak,
right, which I did,
which you can do.
Try that too.
Yeah, just @Dvorak.
So that
you should get my page, but you don't.
No.
You don't. I do.
Yeah.
And I think others do because I see comments. I don't know if they're running a bozo filter, or if you've got something, you got a special cookie you can't get rid of that's on there saying this guy is bad news. Don't give him anything that has anything to do with 5G, because you're obviously outspoken about it. You're doing this podcast, for example. Maybe there's something like that going on. I don't know, but I find this to be extremely suspicious. And I'll just add to the background on this. You actually have a VPN. You turned it off. You couldn't get the page. You turned it on. You moved the VPN location to Canada.
Yep.
You still couldn't get the page. And so this is a very, very strange situation, I have to say.
Yeah. So, but like you said, you are getting recent comments on the article, which is coming up for you. So if you're watching this, if you could just make a comment, let us know if you're getting the article. And again, all of the relevant links are in the description of this video.
No, I mentioned that I could imagine that PC Magazine, I don't know why Medium would pay any attention to them, but PC Magazine could say, because they did repost the column eventually.
Right.
Say, hey, this is bull crap because we reposted oh no, they wouldn't say reposted. We have the column. It's still up. Look, here it is.
Here.
So this guy is full of crap. He just hates us. And so the Medium guys could put it in abeyance and put a bozo filter on so it looks like I can see it and you can't. That's always possible, but that's pretty lame if that's true.
Yeah, I've never had any problems like this before. I don't think it's my computer, and it's confusing to me why it's coming up for you and not for me. So yeah, like if you're watching this, comment, let us know if it's coming up for you.
So and the other thing is, if 5G is a health issue, I think it really doesn't help when you start bringing in other, you start scattershotting your target.
Yeah.
In other words, talking about, yes, I've seen people try to do this sort of argument where you have a target that's very clear and is very simple. And instead of just sticking with it and going after it, they say, well, and there's also this and there's also that, and it also does a bad name, and it's contradictory, and then there's other no, just stick with the one topic. I don't care about surveillance as part of the argument.
Okay.
Personally, I just think it's watering down the target.
Well, that's worth talking about right there. And I appreciate that perspective, because when I made Take Back Your Power, I went on this journey starting in late 2011. It took me a couple of years to make the documentary. I just kept finding, John, one thing after another was a huge red flag about these smart meters. You know, first it was the health, because my friend was getting sick, and then it was the privacy, and then it was homes getting literally burned down. And it was the hackability of the home. So basically your power and anything in your house becomes an open gateway. And then it's the cost going up, because these meters they don't even measure accurately. Like, if you're watching.
No, they're terrible. These meters are ridiculous. When it comes to this 5G thing, I think it's easier if it's targeted for one really bad thing. Because you have to, the problem with the smart meters, they're in most areas where they put them in.
Yeah.
And to get them out, I think you have to do a lot of leveraging. I think it's a case by case thing with 5G, and I think it's also the kind of you want to get away from. I think you want to get away from the kind of always seem as the nutcase. They're spying on us. Everything, Big Brother's watching and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
When 5G argument is, oh no, you get better bandwidth, and you're gonna have. I don't think the bandwidth's that bad right now, personally, but you get better bandwidth. You're gonna love your phone more, which that is a bad thing, but I'm not gonna concentrate on it.
Yeah.
When you have a very simple health issue, which seems to be. And also the health issue will lead into going after all the other technologies. It just seems so much stronger that you don't want to lose focus. I think it's a lose focus concept.
Yeah.
In a public relations way. And another thing is, I think, important, but the other thing is you have the counter public relations people, the people that are arguing for it. If you start scattergunning your complaints about 5G into all sorts of different categories, they'll come at you with, well, no, this has been proven that this thing is not going to, they're not doing surveillance with this, they're using this other technology, and they'll just pound away, and they'll take away from the strong argument and make a big point of your mistake.
Right.
So you're opening yourself up to error.
Yeah.
If you're going to be use pressure tactics on some point or other. Is this unhealthy or not?
Yeah. Good point. You know what's interesting, John, is I noticed that when smart meters first came out, 2010-ish, California was the first large region in the States to get them, and in Canada it was Ontario. And the backlash that followed, we saw some very strong evidence to indicate that the media and the utilities and the commercial hands at play within the mainstream media wanted the conversation just to be focused on the wireless health effects. So, for example, there was Seattle Times did an article, I think in 2013, and it basically said, privacy concerns about smart meters and health. It kind of listed both in the title of the article, and then in the body of it as well. This talked about both, and that was within a week of that going live. I don't know how long after that article went live. Just as one example, it was changed to just the health concern. So the reason why that is, John, I think is because maybe now people are unfortunately kind of more accepting of surveillance state, and it's kind of like, well, it's too big to change. I personally don't believe that that big corporate surveillance is too big to change. I just think it needs to be leveraged enough, which is what In Power movement is doing.
Well, good. I think somebody needs to do that. I'm not a fan of the surveillance state. Let's face it.
Yeah, exactly. But I just want to finish that point. Is that they wanted us to only focus on the wireless health effects, because they can go reference the FCC and say, well, if you have a problem with the wireless health effects and the wireless, causing your health concern, take it up with the FCC and get them to lower the standard of, to reduce the microwatts per meter squared at which it's considered unsafe. Because right now, as we know, most listeners know here, that the scientific level for wireless technology being unsafe is way down here. It's basically like 1 milliwatt per meter squared, and it's basically 10,000 times higher The FCC's limit is approximately 6 to 10,000 times higher than that, because it doesn't take into account all of the non-thermal effects. So this is a huge thing, and they've been called out by the EPA, by the FDA, by the the wildlife associations, or the wildlife agencies in the states. Many different agencies have called out the FCC, and they said, this is old science, it's junk science, it needs to be updated. It's you're not looking at all of these thousands of studies that say non-thermal effects. So what we noticed was that with the smart meter matter, they wanted us to focus on that because they could just shift the blame to the FCC. But what you're saying now is there's kind of like a widespread movement of awareness towards people like having health effects, questioning wireless technologies. And now with all of this, the indications that 5G is taking all that harm to the next level, you're saying that's what we need to focus on, right?
That's what I'm saying. That wasn't in a nutshell, but that's kind of what I'm trying to say. I think. I'm not in. Or I think, another thing is, if you're going to scattergun, I think it's doable if it's all done separately. I've always felt that when you have a number of issues with a technology, that you want to target the technology to rid yourself of it. I think you could have a group that goes after the health effects but doesn't go with the other stuff. In other words, you target health. And then you could have another group that's just bitching and moaning about surveillance. I think that's a logical thing and a good thing to do. But that's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be, this is a surveillance situation. This is bad. It's not good for the public. It's not good for anything. And by the way, it's also not healthy, and it's ugly. I mean, you just don't want to go into, start adding issues to your target, to your targeting. It's just the way you do it. You have to be. So you could have a group that was disliking the surveillance possibilities of 5G, and they would be concentrating their efforts on that one issue. Yeah. That, I think, is much more effective than the scattergun approach, where you can get picked off, because it works against you. I've seen, and I only say this like from a point of authority because I've observed it over the years. I've watched the way the different tech companies go after each other, and the way Microsoft and IBM fought. And I've always seen that when they get too scatterbrained about it, and they're bitching about everything, they lose focus, and they get sidetracked. They lose their punch, and that's what the other side, the bad guys in this case, try to do. They try to make that happen, and it's harder to do if you just focus on one thing and just pounding and pounding and pounding about that one thing. This is the case. This is a similar situation with fluoridation. Fluoridation it turns out, if you do any research on it, seems to be a lot of propaganda that dentists all buy into, but there's no real good research. The good research is quashed. Yeah. And it turns out that really start looking into it. I've always thought about putting a webpage up about this, because we had a problem at my second home in Port Angeles, Washington, where the city council was dumping fluoride in the water that nobody wanted. It made the water taste like crap. We have delicious water up there. And so we started looking into it. My wife was running for city council at the time. And it turns out that all it was is the fluoride that they dump in municipal water supplies is industrial waste. Yeah. You can't not find that at the end of your research, that you're dealing with a bunch of industrial waste. They don't have any way of getting rid of it. But yeah, if you dump it into a reservoir of millions and millions of gallons of water, it gets dissipated. And then you've somehow co-opted the dentistry folk, even though there's plenty of evidence that shows it doesn't do that much for your teeth. But except for topical application, that's what the confusion is. It does. A fluoride topical application directly on the enamel does have an effect, but just drinking it, systematic drinking is not good. Right. But it's like no one's been able to get this targeted in such a way. I think I could do it. I know exactly what the mechanism is in this case. And so it gets watered down, and nothing comes of the arguments. And you have a lot of corruption, small city councils. It doesn't take much to come in there and wine and dine them and get them to agree with whatever you say. It's a problem. And this is a problem with 5G. I can see the same thing happening. Yeah. Oh, well, this is not industrial waste, although I don't know that for a fact.
Right. I mean,
Man, what is this? What do we need this for? What do we need 5G on every telephone pole? Now, you, I think, brought this up, and I've read a little bit about it too, which is the thing that kind of concerns me. Anybody who knows anything about microwaves knows that these high frequencies are not penetrative. They cannot go through anything. They cannot go
5G frequencies. Yeah.
Yeah, the 5G millimeter wave terahertz would be the same thing.
Yeah.
They can't get anywhere. It's like they can't hit the wall and they just bounce off. They can't. I don't even know if they get through glass very well. And so, as opposed to like 900 or like the normal Wi-Fi, which can go through 6-7 walls, or the RF radiation we get from a TV antenna. You have a transmitter on a hill, it's 30 miles away, it hits your house, goes through the whole house, through the bricks, and it hits an antenna in the back of the house, and you get a TV image.
Yeah.
Those waves are penetrative. These aren't. So why are we using non-penetrating waves to do this phone technology? And I'm thinking, well, you can make them penetrate if you punch it up enough to some outrageous wattage, and you can get them to kind of come in the house so you can talk to the 5G connection on your phone in your kitchen. But who needs that? That means when you're outside, you're getting bombarded by a high wattage signal when you're not protected by your own home. This whole thing stinks.
What's your perspective on with being a tech writer, and you obviously have a love for computers, right?
Yeah, I would say I was a hobbyist when they got me started. I still am.
Yeah. So what is your perspective? I mean, are there people within industry and people within that tech world who are starting to really wake up about and ask questions about the health of the safety of wireless, or are people like most people not there yet? I mean, what are you seeing?
These guys that are running the Silicon Valley during a boom time, which means they're making a lot of money, and it comes and goes. They tend to be pretty blind to anything that might stop the cash flow. And it's not like they don't think it's having a health effect, or they actually look into it and they discover that it does, and now they're concerned. They don't even get that far. As far as they're concerned, they look at the money and they say, there's a lot of money being made here. Oh, hey, Bill, there's some health effect issues. Don't worry about that. That it can't be. Otherwise, the government would do something about it. That's the last thing I'm going to worry about. And they just keep going ahead. So you end up with situations like we're looking at.
Yeah.
I don't think they're evil people at all. I think that they're just they have one goal in mind, which is to make a lot of money, and they don't care about the consequences.
Yeah.
They do later when they get older, and then they have to start giving all their money away. Then they're concerned. It just kills me. I see these guys that have become multi-billionaires by overcharging their customers for decades, and then they start giving the money away. Hey, how about you maybe giving the customers a break early on, and maybe the customers can get some money too? But no, you don't see it. That never happens. Yeah. I don't even know why I'm complaining.
Well, we need some more whistleblowers from within industry. That's for sure.
Yeah, good luck.
Well, some people are kind of realizing the situation we're in. I think as a species, I mean, our civilization, we can't keep going like this.
If you look at the way the Democrats and the Republicans are separated by certain ideologies and ideals, they each read they read what they want to read. They read what reconfirms their concept of the world, and that's what you were seeing. You see that with 5G. You could say that all you want, but the guys aren't reading what's Moskovitz, the guy's name out of Cal. They're not reading that website. They're reading 5G's great, yeah. And they read it, and they got a bunch of quotes in there from different people. They know a lot of them. They say, "Oh, this is great. There's nothing wrong with this. I don't know what people are bitching about," and then they go on their merry way. That's just the way it's always going to be.
Well.
You just have to be louder.
Right. I don't know about always going to be, but that's the way it is right now. Just to look at this website again, I wanted to share this with you. This page, it's on takebackyourpower.net. This is the Harvard ethics report that many of our viewers are familiar with. But this is, have you seen this, John? Captured agency, how the FCC is done.
No, I have not. I got to read this. Now, you have to let's stop for a second here. You got to realize that I was not enlightened about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
for the same reasons most of the people in Silicon Valley wouldn't be, until I lost my job over writing an innocuous, mild 5G column. And I do believe that was the genesis. I could be wrong, but the coincidence is a little too much, and I don't believe in coincidences. And now I'm starting to get into it. So I got a lot of catching up to do. I'm probably about, I'd say 1/5 as far along as you are, if that. So no, I haven't. So you can ask me if I read this, I read that. No, the answer is always going to be no. I have not read this. I will go read it.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. I want to get your thoughts on this. So this is about the FCC ruling from last month, a month ago right now. And there was the FCC chair and then 3 FCC commissioners. One of these commissioners was highly dissenting in her remarks to say, this is not the way that we want to go ahead and push 5G upon all these cities and municipalities across the country, because they're going to fight back. And she's identifying here all these organizations, hundreds of cities have basically said, we don't want 5G, but they're not saying it for the most part because of the health matter. They're saying it because of the FCC is wanting just to implement it wherever they want to and take the zoning rights away from local government.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this idea? And I've been posting about this and talking with other leaders about this, is like, now is a perfect time for people to team up with their local governments to support the idea.
Well, again, they're targeting. I think this is fine if they're targeting one thing,
Right.
which is, it sounds like these organizations.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they're targeting one thing. They're not targeting health, and they're not targeting surveillance, and they're not targeting everything you could put into the pot. So I think it's fine that they're doing it that way. But when that gets resolved, what happens? Because it's not a point of some. They're not targeting something that can't be resolved, which is a weak thing. They're targeting something that can be resolved, and so the 5G can go ahead. The health effects can't be resolved, which is why I think that they are the things that should be targeted, and this other stuff could go on as just more roadblocks, because at some point, the people pushing these technologies, the roadblocks become too much. They got the people bitching about the health effects. They got another group bitching about the surveillance effect. You got these city groups bitching about taking their zoning rights back, and bitching about the mandates. And at some point, they just say it's too much work to fight all this stuff, and they give up. That's the only way it ends up working out to the benefit of the public.
Yeah.
Now, that said, the old trick that I've seen this a million times, is they say 5G is, I'm predicting, 5G is untenable, it's dead. We are going to redesign the system, and we're going to call it 6G, and it will be 5G. So this is the kind of thing you always have to worry about winning these battles, because they'll come back at you with something that they do a dipsy-do, say, no, okay, you win, we're going to do this instead. And what they're going to do instead is the same thing. Yeah. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So you're in it for the long haul.
Well, yeah, I mean, myself personally.
Yeah, well, everybody that you know.
Yeah, I mean, once people get woke up about what's happening here, and how our kids are being harmed, with all this like industrial strength routers in school, and there's a whole silencing campaign about that as well. It's crazy, but like you said, I mean, they're looking at the bottom line.
I still think they could make a lot more money if they wired everything.
I do too. I don't understand, like, why. Where's the disconnect, do you think, John? How come they're not looking at the liability when big, insurance meta organizations around the world some of them have basically, Lloyd's of London has said, we're not going to insure wireless carriers for health effects because we're concerned that the long-term potential of it turning around and biting.
It's like the Monsanto suit recently, where the guy, the groundskeeper, sued and got, I don't know, $30-40 million from Monsanto's Roundup. They need one good lawsuit that they can prove and make go over. It's nice to have the And so one of the reasons you want to quash these questioning, the questioning in the site like that Cal professor site, is that you don't want to see an accumulation of evidence, because if a lawsuit shows up and they say, no, there's no evidence that anything like this has ever hurt anybody else, you know, we want it dismissed, and you dump on them like a tonnage of complaints and research and all this stuff that has been quashed or put aside or has disappeared, they lose this lawsuit, and then everybody's in a tizzy, and the whole thing falls apart. That's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody has to actually have a suit that works, and that will stop it. I mean, that would change everything.
The Monsanto, what's happening with that suit has been fantastic. That was recently the judge.
Yeah, it took forever for somebody to do that.
Right.
It's pretty well known.
Yeah. Yeah. And both times, both when the initial ruling came down and just a few days ago when the judge affirmed that she basically reduced it to from 280 million to 77 million, but basically said that's it. You know, you have to pay that.
Yeah, that's it. You're done. The other, I mean, what you need is, if wireless technology turns out to be the asbestos of the 21st century, you're going to see unbelievable bankruptcies happening everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. And these companies and these school districts with the school.
By the way, I think that little analogy is the one I'm going to go with.
Say that again.
I think the analogy is what I'm going to go with. Is 5G? Let's target it. 5G, the asbestos of the 21st century, is one of those little sayings that you can put in the public domain, which would drive these guys crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I like it.
Yeah.
Here, just on the screen here's a few links. I sent you a few of these, John, a couple days ago. But like I said, I mean, the science is really solid. It's just the PR and propaganda campaigns are trying to prevent discussion. So the question is, how do we sort of have dialogue between the two? And I would say, having co-founded In Power Movement, which is a movement that's dedicated to holding the individuals responsible, personally liable through commerce, with a lot of financial liability that is real, that they don't want to pretend it's real, but it's real, it's enforceable. That's kind of playing their game. That's their language is money. And so if we continue to try to get, like you say, that big lawsuit, and hopefully, I haven't seen one yet, and all the wireless, discussions and pushback that's happened over a couple decades now, I haven't seen a big precedent-setting lawsuit yet. But I'm not saying that's not going to happen. What I'm saying is, let's keep pushing for that, but at the same time, we need to come at it from another angle and hold them individually liable using commerce. Let's spread awareness, in other ways as well. But I believe that they're only looking at the bottom line. Their language is money, and they need to individually be pointed out and held liable. That's kind of the way forward. And
I wouldn't say that's a bad idea.
Yeah, we've seen some results. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the Empower episode 1, but in the seed groups that have done this notice of liability process, it hasn't stopped the agenda, and it hasn't stopped mass deployments of smart meters. But what it's done is there's been around a dozen or so people that have, again, coincidentally resigned following being held directly liable for large sums of money. Just a couple dozen people getting together as a group and doing this process. So
troublemaker.
little bit.
It's good. I like the practical stuff being more effective, where you using a practical, which I think you mentioned with these people that have found individuals liable in some sense. I don't know how that works exactly, but if you get them to quit, so okay, I quit, I'm out of here, and those are smart people usually, and they have to be on some of these companies, because if you don't have a lot of smart people in some of these rock and rolling companies, the companies can't work because they're idiots, most of these executives. You lose your smart people, you lose your basis. That is, I think, more effective than moralizing with bromides, like but we want people first kind of thing.
Yeah.
it's great, but it doesn't move mountains. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to obviously make it land and speak their language. And like you say, John C. Dvorak says, the asbestos of the 21st century, right?
5G.
5G is the asbestos of the 21st century. That's so true.
Is it? The question is it, with a question mark at the end, and that's like, what? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So we'll go with that.
Good. Well, John, thanks so much for joining me today and just having this conversation and sharing your.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So tell us, just as we close here, tell us about your podcast and where people can reach you and follow you.
Well, the No Agenda Show is, always follow me on Twitter at The Real Dvorak, The Real Dvorak, Dvorak. And I need more followers. The noagendashow.com is the place you go to listen to the latest episode. It's twice a week, 3 hours an episode. We deconstruct news stories. So we'll find some news stories that seem like they were planted by public relations or they're native advertising, and we expose them. That's all we do pretty much. And then we have a lot of personal anecdotes, since I'm working with Adam Curry, the former VJ of MTV from years back, but he's a natural and very good at deconstructing news. It's like astonishing how good he is. And so that's 6 hours a week, and we get mostly commuters listening. I also do DH Unplugged on Tuesdays, which is also a podcast you can download. And DH Unplugged is about the stock market. And Andrew Horowitz and I go over various companies and what they're up to. And then we have our little stock. It's not stock tips. It's our game we play where we kind of pick stocks. You have to pick your own and see how we do. And we were very good at that. Andrew Horowitz used to win the stock picking contest when Microsoft Money was in business, and they had this yearly competition for picking stocks. And Horowitz won. He's really good at it, and he's he's a money manager. So it's a very good show. So we have these two podcasts going on, and then I'll crop up here and there, like here on the show.
Excellent. Well, I listened to one of your shows a couple days ago, and I was really impressed with you guys. First, you have a sense of humor. It's like engaging and entertaining to listen to. And second, you don't pull any punches. You're talking about the real stuff. And Adam, just like you said, I mean, he's so good at deconstructing arguments. He just dives right in. So it's definitely a very, very good podcast, helping to further and up-level the conversation, I would say.
Yeah, and we do make it entertaining. There's other people that can try to do this stuff, but they're so dour. Oh, it's like you can't listen. You get depressed listening to them, whatever they're saying. And so we try to avoid that, but we kind of have, both the two of us know enough. We've been in broadcasting and on and off forever. So, enough to do it right. But yeah, so noagendashow.com and dhunplugged.com are your two URLs.
Sounds great. Well, John, thanks for joining us again. Everyone, the links are in the description below this video. And this is, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's a new channel. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, I'm Josh, and I want to offer you these two free resources. At the top on the right is a link to my feature film documentary, Take Back Your Power 2017. I've just released it on YouTube. This is the 2017 updated version. It's an award-winning documentary that investigates and helps you to connect the dots on smart meters, on the smart meter agenda, and on specific actions that you can take. Secondly, I invite you to go to the website, takebackyourpower.net, sign up, and immediately receive this brand new EMF reduction guide that I've written. It's going to give you 5 simple areas in which you can take direct, easy steps to reduce your EMF exposure and to increase your vitality. There's also powerful research links towards the end, and there's 3 pages of specifically how to deal with your utility and action steps that you can do right now to deal with the smart meter on your home. So I hope you find these resources helpful, and I welcome you on this journey toward empowerment, and we'll see you again soon.